on, leaving only Vice President Mike Pence.
Well, one of those joins us now from Las Vegas, former Trump strategist Sebastian Gorka, who served the president from his inauguration until August last year. And from Los Angeles, we're joined by Maclen Zilber, a Democratic strategist and commentator. So, Sebastian, Donald Trump, very divisive, very polarising figure. I think depending on where you go in America and who you talk to, he's either the stable genius he would have us believe, who is delivering on almost all the promises he made, or if you live in New York and LA, he's a complete and utter walking catastrophe who's wrecking not just America, but the entire planet.
Yeah, good morning, Piers. I think you summed up the difference between real America and the chattering classes living inside their bubble in New York, Los Angeles, Washington, and San Francisco and Boston. Absolutely. The elite doesn't get Donald Trump. They don't understand how a rank outsider who'd never held public office before became the most powerful man in the world. But if you're an ordinary American who's lost his job or wants to be safe from terrorism, Donald Trump's first year has been incredible. I just listened to your correspondent. I'm not sure whether he's a member of the chattering classes or not, but the statistics are just out there. Lowest unemployment for 18 years, lowest unemployment for African Americans since 1945. We've just had the 76 stock market record broken, 2 million jobs created, the crushing of ISIS. It's been, you said it felt like 20 years. It felt like a very successful 20 years, but it's only been 12 months, and this is what Donald Trump can do.
OK, but Maclen Zilber, just on those stats, I mean, you can hate Donald Trump the man, you can feel repulsed by a lot of his comments, you can be irritated by his tweets, but certainly in terms of the economy and the battle with ISIS, two of his main planks of his campaigning, very hard to argue Donald Trump has not delivered. ISIS are now out of Syria and out of Iraq. And on the economy, hitting all sorts of record numbers. I mean, it's hard to say Donald Trump is a failure, isn't it?
Well, good morning from the Los Angeles chattering class, Piers. And, what I would say as far as the so-called real America versus coastal divide is that Donald Trump's unpopularity has actually increased in states that he won by over 20 points, more than it did in the rest of the country. As for the economic statistics, it's true that the stock market is as high as it's ever been. That being said, it's increased by less in his first year than it did under Barack Obama's first year or George Bush Sr.'s first year. It's been a roughly average stock market increase, and most of the time when we're not in a recession, the stock market hits records. It's true that the unemployment rate has slightly decreased from 4.8 to I think around 4.4%, but that is a dramatically smaller decrease than the longest peacetime economic expansion in history that we saw under Barack Obama. And the question we have to ask is, what policies allegedly created this economic miracle? This is simply a continuation of economic growth that's been happening for 9 years in what's been, thankfully, the longest bull market in history.
Let me jump in on that one point. I mean, last week I thought it was very significant that following his big tax reform bill, which went through just before Christmas, actually Apple, one of America's biggest companies, last week, acting on the new tax reform initiatives, has decided to bring back $380 billion, I think it was, back to the US economy. They're going to open a new factory, create 20,000 jobs. Again, I would say to you, hard to argue that that is not done from self-interest because Trump has made it more economically viable to do that for Apple.
Look, the repatriation tax has been a political football for a long time, but many of these bonuses that came allegedly after the Trump tax reform were either A, planned months in advance and simply announced for political benefit in order to make it seem as if the tax reform caused the bonuses, or B, paired with layoffs in the case of a lot of these companies that announced these bonuses. On top of that, this growth in both the stock market and the job market was going pretty solidly for 8 years prior to this tax bill passing. It's clear that the tax bill happened. Will it have big positive effects? Maybe, but it's going to take years for us to know the results of this. And the reality is that the vast majority of the benefits from this tax bill are going to the very wealthy.
Sebastian Gorka, I just want to say, there are people over here who might be looking at what's happening in the States to mark the anniversary, the unfortunate shutdown, government shutdown. Now, the last time this happened, 2013, under President Obama, Donald Trump made some pretty significant comments about whose fault it was. Let's have a listen to that. Oh, there we go.
You have to get everybody in a room. You have to be a leader. The president has to lead. He's got to get Mr. Boehner and everybody else in a room, and they have to make a deal. And you have to be nice and be angry and be wild and cajole and do all sorts of things, but you have to get a deal. And unfortunately, he's never been a deal maker. That wasn't his expertise before he went into politics, and it's obviously not his expertise now.
Well, this is the man who wrote The Art of the Deal, who says the pressure is all on the president, and if someone is a deal maker, they can fix it. So, unfortunately, that clip's come back to haunt him.
Well, it shouldn't, but first things first, I mean, I really have to address your other guest. He could be a card-carrying member of CNN for the fake news he just peddled. I mean, the CEO of Apple said that they are doing what they are doing because of the president's tax reform. The idea that we're reaping the benefit of Obama's economic policies, President Obama for 8 years could never reach 3% GDP growth. Donald Trump did it for 2 quarters already. So, you know, it's reality in the chattering classes.
Mr. Gorka, if you could just address the question about the fact that the government is now in shutdown, despite the fact that the president's party controls every single part.
It's very easy. It's very easy. So there's something called the filibuster rule, which means for a continuing resolution to fund government, you have to have 60 senators, not 51 out of the 100. 60 vote for the CR bill to go through. The GOP may hold the Senate, but it only has 51 senators in the Senate, which means the Democrat Party and Chuck Schumer have blocked those 9 senators from passing this bill because they want to give work status to illegal immigrants. So they're shutting down the U.S. military for the sake of illegal immigrants. And this is why it has nothing to do with the president, has nothing even to do with the Republican Party.
Sebastian.
This is the Democrats.
Sebastian, let me jump in there.
Yeah.
On this, it seems to me, watching a lot of American news over the weekend, that this is coming down to a deal, actually. And that the deal may well be this, that Donald Trump wants to build his wall, right? It was the main campaign pledge across the southern border to stop the flood of illegal immigration through that border, which in Obama's last year, I think, was nearly 1 million people. So it's a massive problem. He wants to build that wall. The Democrats don't want to give him the money, but the Democrats are equally passionate about the dreamers, these 800,000 people that were brought in by illegal immigrant parents when they were very young, and have since built lives themselves in America. They're teachers, they're in the military and so on. They're decent American people in many ways without the legitimacy of being decent American people. And the deal, it seems to me, that may be done here is that Trump may well get funding for his wall in return for the dreamers being given legal status in America. And that would seem to me to be a pretty reasonable way through this.
No, I think, Piers, you're absolutely right. I think at the end of the day, look, the wall will be built. There is no doubt. The president has said it. The 7 prototypes have already been built. Special forces tested them last week. This isn't theory. It's happening right now. But there is this question of what happens to the children who didn't break the law willingly, but their parents did. But the American people who voted for Donald Trump don't want these people to get citizenship or to go to the front of the queue. I'm a legal immigrant. It took me 3 years to become a U.S. citizen. The idea that I just jumped to the front of the queue because of my parents' illegality, that's what grates with the Americans that voted this man to become president. So I think you're right. A deal will be made, but it's not going to be blanket amnesty for these individuals as the Democrats would have.
OK, bring in Maclen.
Sorry?
I want to bring in Maclen Zilber again. Maclen, it's a complicated issue, and it hasn't been resolved for a very long time. But on the issue of the dreamers, I mean, Sebastian Gorka has a point, doesn't he? Americans, I think, broadly speaking, the vast majority, I think 80-odd%, would like them to be able to stay in America, but they don't want them to be getting necessarily preferential treatment in that process. And on Trump's side, he wants a deal. He wants the wall.
Well, it's not exactly true that Americans don't want these folks to become citizens. Americans want reform that will create a comprehensive pathway to citizenship, especially for these children. But let's not forget what happened. These dreamers are not in questionable status because they suddenly were out of the blue. Donald Trump wrote an executive order rescinding the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program that was allowing them to stay in the country. He's since given Congress until March to allegedly solve this issue. But this was an entirely manufactured political crisis, and it's frankly hostage-taking of the highest order to expect that the Democrats are going to give up on his big campaign pledge because he just essentially put a gun to the head of 800,000 children.
Okay, can I just be
They're not
before we let you,
children. They're not
Sebastian
children.
Gorka, okay, Sebastian Gorka, but just before we let you both go, I just want to ask one brief question before you do. Sebastian Gorka, how long will Donald Trump last as president?
Oh, I can tell you, this guy never gives up. It's another 7 years of Donald Trump as president, another 8 years of Mike Pence as the president after him.
Maclen?
I'd say about a year and a half. It'll take a little bit longer for the Mueller investigation to work itself out. But, you know, after the Dems win back the House in November, I think impeachment may well be on the table not long afterwards.
OK, well, there you have the polarised views of Donald Trump spelled out very loud and clearly. But a good debate, chaps. Thank you very much indeed, Sebastian Gorka and Maclen Zilber. Appreciate it.